When my father remarried, I thought it was just another chapter in his life. But his new wife quietly took over the family finances, shutting me out of decisions and twisting his trust against me. I discovered she had forged documents to claim my late mother's property, worth over $350,000. What she didn't know was that I had proof that could destroy her entire plan and I was ready to use it. My name's Marcus, I'm 42, and until last year I thought I had my life pretty well figured out. I work as an architect in Portland, own a modest 2-bedroom condo, and I've always had a decent, if sometimes strained relationship with my father, Gerald. Trouble began at 7:12 p.m. on a rainy Thursday in February. My dad called me, his voice full of excitement I hadn't had since my mum passed away 6 years ago. "Marcus, I've met someone, her name's Elaine. I think she's the one." I congratulated him, but something in the way he said the one made my stomach knot. He'd known her just 2 months. 2 weeks later, he invited me to dinner at his new favourite place, a sleek French bistro in downtown Portland. That's where I met Elaine for the first time. She was 45, perfectly polished, wearing a pearl necklace and a tailored black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her handshake was firm, her smile precise. "Marcus," she said warmly, "your father talks about you constantly. You're an architect, right? That must be rewarding." I noticed a pause before rewarding, like she wasn't sure if it really was. The first red flag came halfway through dinner when the check arrived. Dad reached for it, but Lynn laid her hand over his. "No, darling, I've got this. You keep your wallet in your pocket." She paid in cash. I spotted several crisp $100 bills, and my father didn't protest. Over the next month, Dad grew distant. Our Sunday calls shortened. When I stopped by his house, Elaine was always there, often answering the door like she lived there already. One Saturday in March, I pulled into the driveway and found a "for sale" sign staked in the lawn. My heart lurched. That was Mom's house. The one she'd inherited from her parents, worth at least $350,000, fully paid off. Inside, I confronted Dad. "What's going on? Why is the house for sale?" Elaine stepped between us, her manicured nails resting on Dad's arm. "Oh, Marcus, we're just simplifying. Your father and I found a lovely condo downtown, last maintenance." Dad looked at me but didn't say a word. I demanded, "And where's the money from the sale going?" Elaine's lips curled in a small smile. "To our joint account, of course, for our future together." My blood ran cold. Mom's house wasn't just property, it was her legacy to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something told me this wasn't just a fast-moving romance. It was a takeover. Then, at 2:17 a.m., I remembered something Dad once told me after Mom's funeral. "Your name's on the deed too, Marcus. She wanted you protected." If that was still true, Elaine couldn't sell the house without my signature. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office to check the deed. What I found made my hands tremble. My name was gone. The fluorescent lights in the Multnomah County Records office hummed faintly above me as I stared at the printed deed. Owner, Gerald Whittaker. No mention of Marcus Whittaker anywhere. My first thought was there had to be a mistake. My mother was meticulous, she'd kept every receipt, every letter. I knew she'd added me to the title after Grandpa died. I asked the clerk, "Can you check prior ownership records?" She tapped at her keyboard and then scrolled. "Looks like the deed was amended last year." My stomach dropped. "Who filed the amendment?" She read off the name. Elaine R. Caldwell. That name felt like a knife. She'd filed the change before they were even married. By the time I got to Dad's place, it was nearly 5 p.m. Elaine opened the door in a silk robe, holding a glass of red wine like she was expecting me. "Well, Marcus, to what do we owe the pleasure?" "I went to the county records office today," I said, stepping past her into the living room. "My name's gone from the deed." "How the hell did that happen?" Dad came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Marcus, calm down. Elaine helped me with some paperwork. There was just to what? Cut me out." My voice was shaking. That house was Mom's. Elaine's tone turned syrupy. "Oh, sweetheart, you're overreacting. Your father was just simplifying things. You don't even live here. Why should your name be on the deed?" Dad didn't meet my eyes. "Marcus, you'll be taken care of." Those words hit me like a slap. Taken care of? That's what people say when they're about to screw you over. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I dug through my own files and found an old photocopy of the original deed with my name on it, dated 2017. My hand shook as I scanned it into my computer. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I'd need it. The next weekend, I drove to see my Aunt Louise in Eugene. She'd been my mom's older sister and had always distrusted my father's quick decisions. Over coffee in her sunlit kitchen, I told her everything. Louise's eyes narrowed. "Marcus, listen to me. Elaine's not just after the house, she's after everything. Your dad's retirement, the life insurance, the stocks. You need to watch every move she makes." She leaned closer. "And I've heard things from an old friend of hers, things you won't like." Before I could press her, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and excused herself to take the call in the hallway. I sipped my coffee, trying to calm my thoughts. Then I heard her voice tight, urgent. No, he doesn't know yet, but if Elaine finds out, it's over for him. My grip on the mug tightened. She wasn't talking about my dad. She was talking about me. When she came back, her face was carefully blank. Marcus, maybe you should head home. We'll talk more another time. I left Eugene with a cold weight in my gut, wondering what Louise knew and why she didn't want to tell me. That question was answered 3 days later when I opened my mailbox and found a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of a marriage certificate. Elaine Caldwell had been married before, to my father's business partner, and the date on the certificate was only 4 years ago. I must have read that marriage certificate a dozen times, tracing my finger over the date. 4 years ago, which meant her divorce would have been barely finalized if at all when she met my father. Her husband on the document was Robert Lang, my dad's long-time business partner in Whittaker and Lang Construction. Robert had been like an uncle to me when I was younger, but he'd vanished from our lives 3 years ago after a falling out with Dad. Suddenly, I had a sickening thought. What if the falling out wasn't about money or contracts? What if it was about her? At 10:41 that night, I called Dad. He answered on the second ring. Marcus, it's late. I need to ask you something. Did you know Elaine was married to Robert? There was a long pause. That's none of your concern, he said flatly. None of my concern, Dad. She was married to your business partner right before you started dating her. You think that's not relevant? She told me everything. Robert was a mistake. His voice grew sharp. Don't go digging where you don't belong. The line went dead. The next morning, I drove to Robert's last known address, a 2-story brick duplex in Hillsborough. The mailbox still had a Lang tape to it, but the place looked abandoned. I left a note with my number under the door. I didn't have to wait long. That evening at 6:58 p.m. my phone buzzed. Marcus, it's Robert. We need to meet tomorrow, noon, Café Arden. His tone was urgent, like we were arranging a handoff in a spy movie. When I walked into Café Arden the next day, Robert looked nothing like the confident man I remembered. His once black hair was streaked with grey, his suit jacket frayed at the cuffs. He didn't even stand to shake my hand. She'll ruin him, Marcus, he said without preamble. She nearly ruined me, and if you get in her way, she'll ruin you too. I leaned in. Start from the beginning. He told me how he'd met Elaine at a charity gala. She'd charmed her way into his life, then his finances. Within 2 years, she had access to the company's accounts. She convinced him to take risky loans, forged his signature on a $120,000 line of credit, and when the business faltered, she quietly started seeing my father. She made sure he found out about the loans, Robert said, eyes flat. Made it look like I'd stolen from him. He kicked me out of the company. The divorce got ugly, and she walked away with a settlement in your father's sympathy. It was a perfect setup. Burn one man, move on to the next, richer target. I asked, why didn't you warn him? I tried, Robert said. He wouldn't listen. She made me out to be the villain, and now she's going for his assets, all of them. As I left the cafe, Robert's words stuck in my head. If Elaine could talk my father into selling the house, what else had she convinced him to do? I didn't have to wonder long. That Friday, I got a text from my bank. Alert, $18,000 wire transfer pending from Whittaker Family Trust to Elaine Caldwell. I didn't even know my father had given her access to the trust account. And I was a co-trustee. I drove to the bank so fast, I barely remembered the traffic lights. By the time I got there, my pulse was pounding in my ears. The branch manager, a balding man named Harris, met me in his glass-walled office. I need to stop a wire transfer, I said, shoving my ID across the desk. $18,000 from the Whittaker Family Trust. He frowned at his screen. I'm afraid I can't stop it without authorization from both trustees. I'm one of the trustees, I shot back. Harris hesitated, then turned his monitor toward me. Not anymore. The screen showed the trust account's updated document. Only one trustee's name remained, Gerald Whittaker. My name had been removed 2 months ago. Who filed this change? I demanded. Harris scrolled. It came through with your father's signature and yours. My stomach turned cold. The signature wasn't mine, it was a shaky imitation, but good enough to pass if you weren't looking closely. Do you have the original paperwork? I asked. 10 minutes later, I was holding up for a copy of the amendment form. The forged signature was there, in black ink. But there was something else, something that made my breath catch. The witness signature belonged to Louise Whittaker. My aunt. My mother's sister. The same woman who'd warned me about Elaine. It felt like the floor tilted under me. Louise had been in on it? Or was she playing a deeper game? That night, I drove to Eugene and announced. When she opened the door, she looked startled, like she'd been caught with her hand in a drawer. We need to talk, I said. In her living room, I threw the photocopy onto the coffee table. Why is your signature on this? Louise's jaw tightened. Because I was there when your father signed it. And you didn't think to tell me I was being cut out of the trust? She stood, pacing to the window. Marx, you don't understand. I was trying to protect you. I laughed bitter. By letting them forge my name? She turned back, her face pale. If I hadn't signed as witness, Elaine would have found someone else. This way, I stayed close. I could watch her. You think I wanted this? I've been trying to gather proof she's planning to drain every account and disappear. I wanted to believe her, but then she said something that made my skin crawl. She's not just after the money, Marcus. She's after you. What does that even mean? Louise hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. Your mother wasn't who you think she was, and your father isn't your biological father. The room seemed to shrink around me. What are you talking about? Louise's eyes glistened. Elaine knows. She found out somehow, and she's been using it to control your father, the man she was married to before Robert Lang. He's your real father. I froze. The air felt thick, impossible to breathe. Louise stepped closer. Marcus, you're the only blood heir to Robert's estate. If Elaine marries your father and he dies, she could position herself to claim everything from both sides. The realization hit me like ice water. She wasn't just dismantling my father's life. She was positioning herself to strip me bare. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I stared at the text until the words seemed to burn into my vision. My first instinct was to call the police, but then I imagined trying to explain everything, the forged documents, the trust, the family secrets, without sounding like a conspiracy theorist. Instead, I showed Louise the message. Her face drained of colour. She knows you've been talking to me, she said. We have to be careful. Careful? I snapped. She just threatened Dad's life. Louise put a hand on my arm. Marcus, listen, Elaine doesn't need to kill him. She needs him alive long enough to get what she wants, but if she feels cornered, she'll lash out. That's when people get hurt. I hated that she sounded like she knew from experience. That night, I drove back to Portland, taking the long way home, scanning my mirrors for headlights that stayed too long. I couldn't shake the feeling someone was watching. The next morning at 8:04, I went to Dad's house and announced. Elaine answered the door in yoga pants and a fitted top, looking like she'd just stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Marcus, she said, surprised but not unsettled. To what do I owe this pleasure? I stepped inside without asking. We need to talk about the trust. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. I think that's a matter between your father and me. Then why was my signature forged? I asked. She tilted her head, as if amused. That's a serious accusation. Not an accusation. I have the paperwork and the witness. For the first time, her smile slipped. You should be careful, Marcus. People who dig too much often find things they wish they hadn't. I leaned in, my voice low. Like the fact that you were married to Robert Lang, or that you've been siphoning money from the trust account. Her lips curved into a slow smirk. You think you're clever, but you're not. Your father believes me, not you, and when he's gone, I'll have what I deserve. That was the first time she said it so plainly. When he's gone. I left before my anger made me do something stupid. 2 days later, Dad called me. His voice was thin, shaky. Marcus, I need you to stop harassing Elaine. She's been nothing but good to me. Dad, she's stealing from you. I said stop, he barked. And if you can't, then don't bother coming around anymore. The line went dead. I sat in my car outside my condo for nearly an hour, staring at nothing. She turned him against me completely. That evening, Louise called. I found something, she whispered. A bank statement from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. It's in Elaine's name, and Marcus, there's over $480,000 in it. Before I could process that, she added, but that's not the worst part. There's a recent deposit from Whittaker and Lang Construction, dated just last week. The same company my real father, Robert, had once co-owned. If Elaine was moving money out of that company now, it meant Robert was somehow still connected and she was bleeding him too. And then Louise said the words that made my blood run cold. Robert's in town, and he's been meeting with your father behind Elaine's back. I didn't waste time. The next morning, I drove straight to Hillsborough, to the same quiet cafe where I'd met Robert before. I texted him on the way, need to talk. Now. Urgent. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a black coffee, eyes darting to the door every time it opened. He looked worse than last time, like he hadn't slept in days. I slid into the booth. Louise says you've been meeting with my father. Why? Robert sighed, running a hand over his face. Because I found out what Elaine's really doing, and Gerald's your dad, he's in deeper than you think. He pulled a folder from a leather briefcase and slid it across to me. Inside were photocopies of wire transfers, loan agreements, and corporate filings. Every one of them had 2 things in common: Elaine's name and signatures from both Gerald and Robert. Half these signatures aren't mine, Robert said. She's been forging mine again, using dormant accounts from when we were partners. She's moving money out of the company into offshore accounts. Your father thinks it's for some joint investment. I flipped through the pages, my stomach churning. The totals were staggering: over $1.02 million moved in less than a year. She's planning to vanish, Robert continued. And when she does, your father will be left bankrupt. But here's the part I haven't told you yet. He paused, lowering his voice. Gerald's been helping her without realizing it. She's convinced him you're trying to take everything from him. He's cut you out of the will. I sat back stunned. So when he goes, She gets it all, Robert finished. The house, the accounts, everything from Whittaker and Lang and your mother's inheritance, then she'll disappear. I stared at him. Why are you telling me this now? Because I just found out she's booked 2 one-way tickets to Belize, flights in 9 days. My pulse kicked into overdrive. That night, I called Louise. She wasn't surprised. Marcus, I think she's accelerating her plan. She probably knows we're onto her. We decided on a strategy, gather everything we could and confront Dad with undeniable proof. If we could show him the forged signatures, the offshore accounts, the marriage certificate, maybe he'd finally see the truth. The next day, I went to Dad's house to see if I could quietly collect any of his financial paperwork. But when I pulled into the driveway, I froze. The front door was wide open. Inside, the place was a mess, drawers yanked out, papers scattered, a lamp knocked over. Dad? I called. No answer. Then I saw his phone on the kitchen counter, next to his glasses. A single sheet of paper was taped to the refrigerator. In neat block letters, it read, "You have 48 hours to stop where he disappears for good." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that note taped to the fridge. By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Louise and Robert, told them to meet me at our house by noon. If Elaine wanted a game of pressure, I was going to flip the board. When they arrived, I spread everything out on the dining table: the forged trust amendment, the old deed with my name on it, the offshore bank statement, the marriage certificate, even the screenshots of the threatening texts. "This is enough to bury her," I said. Robert looked doubtful. "Only if we can get your father here to see it." That's when Louise slid her phone across the table. Already done. She texted Dad, saying she had urgent news about his health, something Elaine couldn't ignore. At 1:47 p.m, Dad's SUV pulled into the driveway. Elaine was with him. She walked in first, all fake warmth. Louise and Marcus, how unexpected. Her eyes flicked to the papers, and I saw the faintest hitch in her composure. "Sit down," I said. She laughed. "I don't take orders from you." Dad stepped in, frowning. "What's going on here?" I took a breath and pushed the folder toward him. "This is what's going on, Dad. Forged signatures, offshore accounts, wire transfers to the Caymans, and the fact that your wife was married to Robert before you while she was bleeding him dry." Elaine's smile vanished. "This is pathetic, Marcus. You've always been jealous." Robert cut in, his voice sharp. "Gerald, she forged my name on $120,000 in loans when we were partners, and now she's doing it to you. Look at the dates. Look at the amounts." Dad's eyes moved over the documents. His face drained of colour. "Elaine, is this true?" She hesitated just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Louise reached into her purse and pulled out a small black device. "By the way," she said, "you've been recorded since you walked in." Elaine's head snapped toward her. "You." Louise pressed play. The recording was from a phone call Elaine had made 2 nights ago. Her voice was unmistakable. "Once the money hits Belize, we're in the clear. Gerald's too blind to see what's coming. Marcus will be cut out for good." The room went silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Dad's shoulders sagged. "Get out," he said quietly. Elaine blinked. "What?" I said, "Get out." His voice thundered through the room. "Before I call the police." She tried to recover, but Robert stood and blocked her path to Dad. "Leave now." By 3:00 p.m, she was gone, just her yoga mat and a single suitcase in the back of a ride chair. In the weeks that followed, Dad reinstated me as co-trustee and returned my name to the deed. With Robert's cooperation, the police opened a fraud investigation. Elaine never came back to Portland. The last I heard, she'd been arrested in Miami trying to board a flight to Belize with $612,000 in cash hidden in her luggage. Dad never apologized outright, but one Sunday afternoon as we sat on his porch, he handed me a folded check. "For the condo," he said. "I want you to have a place that's yours, no matter what happened." It wasn't just about the money, it was about knowing he finally saw me again. Elaine had almost taken everything. But in the end, she lost the one thing she wanted most: control. And I got back what I thought I'd lost forever: my family's trust.